We are often aware of our Suzuki alumni who grow up to become professional performing musicians. People like Pulitzer Prize-winning composer Caroline Shaw, or Aaron Keefe, or Nicholas Kendall, or Amy Barston, or my favorite, Kevin the beatboxer from the group The Pentatonics. But the majority of our Suzuki students choose a non-musical career path. Dr. Suzuki wrote, "Teaching music is not my main purpose. I want to make good citizens." Our alumni are out there making a meaningful difference in the world in a variety of fields. And many credit their Suzuki upbringing with helping shape them into the people they are today. Our next speaker, Matthew Loden, has enjoyed a varied career within the classical music industry as both an accomplished musician, teacher, and arts administrator. As a violinist, Mr. Loden performed regularly with orchestras, including the Kennedy Center Opera and Ballet Orchestras, the National Symphony Orchestra, the Houston Grand Opera and Ballet Orchestras, and more. In 2012, Mr. Loden became the Executive Vice President for Institutional Advancement for the Philadelphia Orchestra. He is responsible for all contributed revenues, public relations and communication, board development, governance, and for sustaining key external relationships and coordinating strategic planning initiatives. Please welcome Suzuki alumnus and Suzuki dad, Matthew Loden.
It's a tough act to follow. Wow, that was amazing. When I was asked to speak today to represent parents and former Suzuki students who are in a non-performance career, I was struck by a familiar pang of musical regret. You see, I used to be a sort of Suzuki poster child for my hometown of Houston, Texas, and I was also a professional violinist, a teacher, for 2 decades. Now I have a day job at the Philadelphia Orchestra that occupies much of my time, which means my early violin training and my 2 degrees in music performance are no longer the underpinning of my daily bread. This fact can sometimes bring about a psychic crisis of identity. All those play-ins, the group lessons, and the nighttime Suzuki repertoire tapes looped into my dreams are now a thing of the past. I spend much of my time in an office now, not on stage, and I no longer stand out in a crowd because I'm carrying a sleek black violin case on my back around the Upper West Side of Manhattan, heading to Lincoln Center or Carnegie Hall, poised to make great art in important places. The skills I honed after hours of practice and study are no longer how I measure my success in the world. Weeks go by without me opening my case, and it's been a few years since I sat in a violin section and played Mahler on stage. That is the pang. I'm clearly still a recovering former Suzuki student who is muddling through a non-performance career. But luckily, part of my 12-step program for Suzuki musicians who are now civilians includes having a child in a wonderful Suzuki program. I am the proud Suzuki father of Eleanor Loden, who studies piano with Joan Krzyzewicki, and has already performed a few times this weekend. My daughter is setting her sights next on escaping the 8th grade and then heading for her 9th consecutive year in Beaver Creek, Colorado for a week-long piano workshop with her mom. It is their favorite annual pilgrimage. So I am no longer the Suzuki kid, but my daughter is. And being on the other side of a performance career and also being the parent of a Suzuki kid has given me a particular perspective that I have really come to appreciate lately. Here is what I have learned and what I would like to share with you tonight. I have discovered that it is infinitely more terrifying to sit through your child's recital than it is to play your own solos at Carnegie Hall. I know you have all shared this feeling of dread as parents and teachers yourselves. We sit in folding chairs in retirement home spaces or school gyms, waiting for the twinkle variations to subside. And when it is our kids' turn to play, we make bargains with convenient deities to ensure that the Bach that they have polished is actually rendered as originally intended, without the stutters and memory lapses that twist a parent's stomach and make our children sweat. We hope against hope that our kids will keep trying to find the musical thread once it's been lost in their performance, to let muscle memory take over in those tricky spots that never really felt comfortable, to exit the silence of a failed run, that excruciating, expanding quiet that is so charged as we helplessly watch our children figure it out for themselves, all alone in front of the world with blooming failure just over the horizon. And there is nothing a parent can do but sit there and watch as the thing you love most in the world has to learn how to turn a mistake into a gesture of beauty. A mistake that Bach never imagined, but that still contains its own special music. How cool is that? One of the more compelling bestsellers these days is Angela Duckworth's Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. She's at the University of Pennsylvania, back in Philadelphia, where she studies intangible concepts such as how self-control and stick-to-itness might predict both academic and professional success. How does motivation, curiosity, and a sense of belonging translate to achievement in students? What role does failure and recovery play in how one moves through the world? Professor Duckworth insists that it's not social intelligence, good looks, or a high IQ that are the markers of success. It's the non-cognitive skill of grit that determines getting ahead in this world. Duckworth defines grit as having a passion and perseverance for very long-term goals. What could be more Suzuki than that? For me, grit means pushing to get to the end of Suzuki Book 5 before your best friend does. Grit is falling flat on your face at the recital because your memory failed and you are trapped vamping a circular motif that kind of sounds like the Bach double, but you're supposed to be playing the Two Grenadiers. I've been there. Grit is having the strength of will to imagine making a better sound, or to find a new level of technical ability, or to step out of a choir and sing a solo with effortless expression. Grit is making yourself vulnerable so that you can seem to be invincible on stage. I'm sure you all see these moments of growth and determination in your daily lessons and classes, so I'm not really saying anything new, I know. Think about when we're young, we have such a different tolerance for risk than in our twilight years. The bravado of a young student on stage playing a Mozart concerto is something wonderful to behold. Think of how normal it is to call a solo musical performance a tight wire act. That's the perfect metaphor. Pushing against that constant risk of failure is what makes Suzuki kids so remarkable. Suzuki kids have such resilience because great teachers build a peer group around the child learning an instrument, and they expect a discipline of practice and work that requires at its core parental involvement and support. We all need examples to look up to, and we all need help, even if it's from our parents. But great teachers are also adept at creating an atmosphere of magical learning where mistakes happen and notes are missed, but that sometimes doesn't matter because you are trying to hit something beyond the notes. The really good musicians know that the real stuff of music happens in between the notes. And anyway, everything in Suzuki has repeat signs, so you usually get a second chance. I have been blessed with many fantastic and generous teachers my entire life, from Stephen Clapp to Zvi Zeitlin, Friedel Lack to Dick Simon in the New York Philharmonic. I've had incredible guidance from true masters. My own Suzuki journey began with Judy Hoffman in 1976. Go Judy. In 1976, I was lucky enough to be in one of the very first Suzuki violin programs in a public school in Texas. A couple of years after starting the violin in 1978 as a fourth grader, I was selected as one of 50 Suzuki kids from around America to tour with Dr. Suzuki and his Japanese students as part of the International Children's Tour. The headlines in my local paper read, "Suzuki violinist Matthew Loden plays Carnegie Hall." We also performed at the Kennedy Center for Jimmy Carter. What a thrill that was. But my biggest claim to fame was having Brian Lewis as my lunch buddy on tour. These were moments that absolutely shaped my future ambitions as a musician. But more than this, my Suzuki training allowed me to see how hard work could actually be fun, and that having a lot of people clap for you felt pretty awesome. But it only happened if you put yourself out there in the first place. I think my daughter is learning these same lessons right now. She knows that practicing and performing music is not something to get through. It's not just a daily obligation on a to-do list. She knows that how she approaches the piano is actually teaching her how to shape her own attitude about life. All this nostalgia actually has a point tonight, and while I know I'm preaching to the choir in this room, I will say it anyway. I believe we can give no greater gift to our children than the ability to be passionately curious and vigorously independent problem solvers who never give up. And when the problems they are trying to solve happen to be learning how to translate notes on a page into their own unique expressions of self, when they learn how to tell a story through the simple shape of a phrase of music, and when they stand alone on stage and they do it in front of a room filled with strangers that are hungry for a moment of community, I think that's a parent's dream and Suzuki's real gift. We are all performers of one type or another. We just stand on different stages. So thank you, Dr. Suzuki, for bringing music into my life, and thank all of you in this room who remind us of what is possible and that we should always remember to bow for the important things.